Okay, alrighty. Looks like we're recording here. It's Sunday afternoon around 3:35 or so. I tried to wait a while to do this video so that I could get some student questions to respond to, but none have come in yet. I'm assuming that means the documents were good. Um, However, okay, first things first, little health update. So Friday, I went to the doctor. I got my positive confirmation, and I also got Paxlovid and an antibiotic and a steroid. And other than a headache that keeps coming and going, and today's the first day I haven't had one for a while at least, I actually feel pretty good. And if it wasn't for the CDC isolation guidelines, or if I wasn't aware of them, I might have been tempted to actually have class tomorrow. Probably a good idea, though. I know I still have moments when I run thin, go close my eyes for a while and try to ditch the headache, though sleep, thanks to the steroid, is kind of out of the question. Um, I take it first thing in the morning and hope it's mostly worn off around bedtime sometime. But it's much more powerful than the steroid I usually take for my rheumatoid arthritis. All things considered, though, I'm feeling good. I expect class to happen on Wednesday. Just have to monitor my temperature and make sure that I'm not running a fever within 24 hours of when I expect to see you guys. And I don't think that's an issue, actually. Okay, the essay. First off, a quick review of policy claims. Okay. For this essay, you need an actionable solution, right? This can't just be a people need to think about this solution. It needs to be something that they can physically do. And because a physically doable solution varies from audience to audience, sometimes quite broadly, you need a single audience. Okay. And lots of people's topic proposals, and even still in some of the topic introductions we heard the other day, people are focusing on multiple audiences. That will not work. Okay. You need one audience, one action. Okay. That's the two big things I've been noticing. And yeah, I'm trying to keep this brief. Like I say, the document's pretty good, and there are going to be subsequent documents, plenty, um, to help you get this essay done well. Um, Minimum research versus good research, right? We have a three item research component, right? But I just put online this morning, I added some new materials and I'll return to that later. I added some new materials, including some sample student essays, and I'm going to take a quick look at their works cited pages and kind of give you an idea of what good essays do in terms of research. So I'm looking at the first one here, and right off the bat, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 total sources. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of those are academic in nature, and at least 3 more from government websites. Pretty darn reliable type sources, right? Okay, second one. Oh, I already counted this one. 17 sources, 8 of them academic. And none of these papers are exceptionally long. First one's 2194 words, just not much over the 2,000 word limit. Second one's 2,293 words. This last one's 2,166 words. I've got a little note on here that there was an issue with what's called common knowledge. Common knowledge is things that your reader can be expected to know and therefore does not need citation. Like if I referred to D-Day, I would like to assume that most of my audience knows what that is, right? I don't need for simple references, you don't need documentation anyways. But if I quoted a source about D-Day, um, well, okay, a lot of people might not know that. But if I quoted, the date of D-Day, June 6, what, 1944, 45, something like that. And then of course I don't even know what it is, but I know it close enough I'd recognize if I saw it, right? I would not need to document the use of that date. Fairly common knowledge. Um, Pearl Harbor, December 6th, right? Um, Dropping of the first atomic bombs in August sometime, 1945, I believe. So yeah, things like that people could probably recognize as valid. Um, pretty good stuff that you don't have to recognize. If I were to say something like the wearing of masks helps prevent the spread of COVID, most people should probably know that. Not many people follow the advice, but most people probably know that masks do, in fact, help limit the spread of COVID and no, they don't lead to their own types of respiratory diseases. Okay. Anyways, this last one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sources. Right. Yeah, I'm counting that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of them academic, and that's counting the Pew Research Center as an academic source because it certainly is. Um, Not necessarily something you find in a database, but an academic source nonetheless. Pew Research Center is that's what they do. They do public-based research. So again, none of those stop at 3 sources, and they all use significantly more. And most of the other stuff that they used was they were really good, creditable sources. I saw one source in that whole list that was kind of a popular consumption source, and the paper it was used for made sense, right? There's another one of the sources that I just looked at. Lots of those sources were actually for enabling the action. That was the second one. The long section of that paper, the paper was about you should eat more nopales, okay, a traditional Mexican dish or food, prickly pear cactus pads, right? Well, not many Americans know what the heck to do with the prickly pear cactus pad. So there was a lot of discussion and recipes about how to prepare them, enabling the action. Remember, this is a possibility for your research. And one of those sources was interviews. Well, 2 of them, interviews with the same person, or at least the single interview got used twice for 2 different recipes. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but perfectly good source for the type of paper it is, right? You need to consider the relevance between your source use and your topic and your purpose. And that sometimes determines relevancy or the application, the reasonable application of a source within the context of the essay. Be thinking about this sort of stuff. Okay, that's all I want to linger on for the actual essay for today. Well, maybe not. Something's going to come up in one of these documents for either, maybe it did come up for today, maybe it's going to come up in the reading you do from Monday to Wednesday. But it talks about the parts of an essay, of an argument. Okay, there are three main parts of any argument. There's the claim, which we probably relate in the element of writing to thesis, right? And the claim usually occurs early in the paper because it helps guide your reader. It allows them to anticipate what the essay is about so that if there are any holes in your logic or in your content, they can kind of fill in. They can come to their own conclusions about some things that maybe you just kind of overlooked or you thought were obvious. There are there's the support. Okay, the claim, the support. That should be pretty obvious. But it includes, and I do want to think actually about support. Be sure and provide a variety of support, right? Whenever possible. Include some facts, include some statistics. You're going to need darn sure to make sure there's some appeals in a claim of policy essay. Appeals are, they help determine the value of the condition, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. This is the why it needs action part. And then you might need some motivational appeals to get people to take that action, right? And oftentimes those are based in needs and value appeals as well. Well, they are need and value appeals. All appeals are either need appeals or value appeals, but there's a sort of category called motivational appeals where you use them just to motivate a reader to take action. I want to talk a little bit about, and again, examples and images. Images are probably a specialized form of example in most cases. And I really would recommend you try and incorporate some of these to slow down the pace of reading and slow down the bombardment of data. Right. And I've talked about this before, I know, but remember, when you produce a memory burden on your reader as you unravel your essay in front of them, and if you're just whacking them with fact after fact, statistic after statistic, their brains are going, slow down once in a while. Because examples are narrative in nature, they tend to slow down the reading pace a little bit and they give people time to process not just the example, but what they absorbed before it. And if the example is related to the facts and statistics presented, it gives them a context and it allows them to put it all together in their heads before you move on. Okay. One, images can do the same thing, but they work in a completely different sort of a mode because they're not text-based. But it does give people a chance to look away from the text and see something in a different way, and that gives them a mental rest too. Whenever you're bombarding one part of the brain too hard, too much, you're going to overtax your reader sooner or later. But because images are processed in a different part of your brain than printed language is, you give them that little bit of mental respite that can help them absorb more. Okay. One thing I want to talk about examples specifically are hypothetical examples. Hypothetical examples are examples that you make up and they are permissible evidence. But, okay, for an audience to accept a hypothetical example as valid, it must feel real. It has to conform with the audience's interpretation of the universe. You can't get too wonky, too wacky, or they will reject it. Also, for ethical use of a hypothetical example, you have to announce that it is hypothetical. Okay. First, it won't be referenced to a source. It won't be documented as a source, but that's not enough. You have to say, let's consider this imaginary example, or let's consider a hypothetical instance. You have to announce that to your readers so that they don't think this really happened in the world, right? You can use them. You just have to use a little bit more care with a hypothetical example than you do one that actually comes from a source. And again, with one from a source, it would have documentation for its origins. All right. We're rapidly moving along here, and I'm trying to be rapid. Um, don't want this to go on forever. I do want to do a screen share, and I want to talk a little bit about new materials that I've added to D2L in the last little bit. And I'm starting out here on the table of contents, but I want to zoom in because notice again, here's section 1, you get a little bit of discussion here. Section 2, a little bit of discussion here. But when I zoom in to unit 2, notice that I'm getting more discussion of individual items. I had this discussion of the sample student essay subfolder before, but now I'm seeing this as well. And I added some stuff that's on the reading list. I'm not going to go back to that because you're going to read it soon enough anyways. I also might add some documents that are not on the daily schedule. I will be adding those in yet another subfolder down here, and I will just call it potentially useful documents or something like that. And I will probably material that I will quite probably discuss in class as well. Um, didn't really feel like I had room for it in the daily schedule, but still some important things that you should probably have access to. Again, um, not even stuff that was covered in our old textbook, but stuff that I think is important. Two of the things I added, we're not going to do the peer workshops for quite a while, right? But these peer workshop guides, there's two of them. One is for big issues in the paper, and one is for like proofreading issues. These can also be used as writing guides. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I think about when I grade your papers. As a matter of fact, these were probably almost written from a rubric, right? And again, I hate rubrics because students tend to write to the rubric and it circumvents original thinking. But the workshop guides, they're not structured the same way as a rubric, right? And they don't have grade values attached to them. So they can actually be useful as writing guides and will probably not stifle creativity as badly. But there are two of them. And the first one, the really important one, not that you can't fail a paper if it's just written really poorly or the documentation's wrong. You can, and that's what's covered in this one mostly. But this is the one where you start drafting. These are the things you should be thinking about. It's a pretty long document. It's single space. The print is small. One advantage, perhaps, of getting these in an electronic form instead of a printed form, and I will actually supply print copies of these on workshop days, but you want to have read these way before that, okay? Um, Again, they're good writing guides, and if you wait until peer workshop day to read these, you'll spend 15 to 20 minutes of our class workshop just reading the workshop guidelines, and you won't get to give feedback to very many people. As a matter of fact, you'll be hard pressed to give feedback to more than one or two papers in a class meeting, period. There's that much to think about, and you have to read the whole essay. You can't just read part of it and say, oh, this is really good. No, if somebody does that to you in a peer workshop, hand their paper back to them without commenting on it. Yeah, because that's BS. Um, Anyways, the second one, less important, more about polishing your essay, making sure the P's and Q's are there, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, stuff like that. Um, but still. Then I've got three sample student essays. First one is about abolishing the selective service. Uses government sources very effectively. Really nicely done essay. I was actually I remember being surprised when I read it how good it came out. I shouldn't have been, but but I was. The second one is the one about eating more Napales. And then the third one, a really sort of specialized topic um, about LGBTQ inclusion in the Mormon Church. And this is the one that's maybe a little bit light on its research. It's got a couple of database articles that met the criteria. It's got a couple more articles from the Pew Research Center that count as academic, and uses a lot of websites and a lot of other material, but it's all relevant to the argument. And again, that's the important thing, and really, really well written. Yeah, really, really well written. They're all really well done. I had other examples. I chose these three because they all take kind of different approaches, not just in terms of topic, but in terms of the way that they present their arguments. That second one is especially different because of the way it distributes the weight of its bulk between problem and solution. A lot more emphasis on solution and enablement in that one than in the other two. They do a lot more time developing the basis of the problem. Okay. But really good stuff in all three of those. And are they perfect? As it says here, no. But sometimes minor problems are, they just don't count as much when the first thing I do when I read your essays, I read them through and I think, is this persuasive? Which is like super good. Is it reasonable? Which is pretty good. Or is it plausible? Which means, yeah, okay, I can see this, but it's not. It's plausible. Okay. And then it's reasonable, one step up. And then it's persuasive, highest step. If I start with a persuasive essay, any deductions I make to it aren't going to have the same kind of impact. I mean, if you start it at 98 and you lose 5 points, you're still at a 93, right? If you start at a 78 and you lose 12 points, you're suddenly at a 60, what, 6, a D paper. So, be aware. And of course, below plausible, there is unreasonable, and then there is not our assignment. Right. Those are the F papers, the ones that just aren't doing the work, man. They're not getting there. Lots of people misinterpret what a claim of policy is. If you don't have a claim of policy, I can try and read it for what it might be, but it is not our assignment. So be aware that you really need to be familiar with the assignment guidelines and what is required of this. By now, I would like to think that most of you certainly are. By the way, I'm drinking decaffeinated tea today because the steroid has taken the place of all the caffeine in my world. Okay, let's stop this. All right, so we're back here to my giant face, and my highly reflective glasses and my dirty office. But I think that's probably plenty for today. This will give you something that you can consume easily during what would have been our class time tomorrow. And I'm not going to do a video that is for Monday to Wednesday, because Wednesday we're going to be back in the classroom. I do intend still to go through the list of topic introductions and figure out who wasn't there on Monday, the people that should have gone. They're going to go at the top of the list when we meet back. Then there will be everybody that was originally on the list. And we know from Monday, from last week's topic introduction experience, that we're not going to get to 10. A really good day is 9. And I might even distribute the remainder of the list a little bit more between Wednesday and Friday. I might not, right? And we're probably still going to have a couple of stragglers for the Monday after that. I'm pretty sure I have a student athlete that was supposed to go last week. We didn't get to him, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be gone all of this coming week for travel and competition. So we'll just have to keep on keeping on. I hope that the simple advancing of the daily schedule has worked. Um, by the way, there is a small possibility that when I come off the Paxlovid, I might encounter rebound symptoms. It's super small. It's like a 4% chance, right? Where you come off the drug and then your symptoms try to come back a little bit. They're usually not, they're usually mild when they do. They'll ebb again rapidly. But there is that possibility. If that's the case, we're going to keep right on doing what we've been doing. We'll advance the daily schedule one day. I don't think it's going to be necessary. I've always been relatively resilient to illnesses. Um, and I'm hyper vaccinated. I'm on so many drugs. I mean, I always take quite a few things for my rheumatoid, right? But I've like more than doubled the amount of pills I'm taking on a given day this week. So I do expect to be back in class Wednesday and doing fine. Um, in the meantime, carry on, keep up. And as you encounter questions, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them immediately. And again, if I try to redistribute the topic introductions a little bit more between Wednesday and Friday instead of ramming as many as I can on Wednesday. This is what I was trying to do last week to free up this week for these discussions. Now, I think it might be more important to slow down the topic introductions just a little and make sure there's some time in class for a Q&A session. All right, I will see you on Wednesday.